Okay. If we have a diverse group of people that each has a different way of thinking, that there are different, actual different cognitive styles. Carl Jung had his, Temple Grandin, who was autistic, I believe, but became quite famous at drawing out the different cognitive styles, particularly that autistic people have.
Mm.
But also Nora Bateson, who came up with the idea of triple contexting, that we can't just look at things from one in one
That's
context.
considered.
Yeah, but so this is from Clint Fuss, he was part of the whole Ken Wilber integral community.
Mm.
His PhD thesis was on adults' ability to not only take different perspectives, but effective leaders also sought out different perspectives.
Yeah.
And
Ah.
then the most effective ones were able to coordinate
Mm.
perspectives and integrate them into a more complex
Absolutely.
understanding.
Makes
So
absolutely sense for me. Yeah.
here we go.
Mhm.
We have different perspectives on my coffee mug. That if you just saw one perspective, like this one over here, where my cursor is going around,
Yeah.
um, you would say, well, it looks like sort of a conical thing.
Mm.
And somebody else from this perspective might say, no, but it has a handle. And you would go, no, it doesn't. It does
Yeah.
not have a handle.
Yeah.
And somebody down here would go, yeah, I see a handle, but it's not conical. It's just kind of round.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, and people could spend forever arguing about, like what this thing looks like. Um, but the pers the person who could, organize the perspectives would see that this perspective is related to that perspective,
Yeah.
and this perspective is related to that perspective, and this perspective is related to that perspective.
Yeah.
And together they all, you know, describe this thing, that we know as a coffee mug. Well, what if you're dealing with something that is not a common object like a coffee mug? What if you're dealing with, three-eye atlas
Yeah.
and we
Oh,
don't know what it
yeah.
is?
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Makes very sense to me. It,
yeah.
I was just looking for another image. Do you know that kind of um, image where this a cylinder
Oh,
project?
I have that one too.
Yeah,
Yes.
show
I
that, show
have
that.
that one.
Because that image is perhaps a bit less richer than your examples that you make, but it also shows how it's not just about coordination, but integration.
Integration. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You integrate an image, a different point of view in something in reality has nothing to do with that the single points of view, but is something entirely different. And yet it it is it projects these points of view where you can see all the points of view at once. So this is uh, impressive in a certain sense, right? Because my metaphor that I use is in reality all our ideas, all our perspectives, all what we perceive of reality, and all what we think in reality is a shadow. These are all our thoughts, our
Hmm.
opinions, and so on, are shadows. Uh, the real thing is never, you will never be able to construct the real thing
Hmm.
starting from the shadows. Yeah. And not only, but these shadows, someone has this opinion here. I don't know, it's a cursor. Do you see the mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one opinion or one perspective, one point of view. This is another point of view. But both point of views are still shadows of
Yeah.
the real thing.
Thing.
And perhaps in our state of consciousness, we are still maybe not able to go beyond these shadow perspectives, but becoming aware of the fact that this is our perception of reality is already a step forward, I believe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we have very often, we don't have this awareness. And that's a real problem that our society has nowadays, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so let me see.
Read more Plato.
Yeah, I am in this sense, I'm very Platonic, yes. May we begin? Oh, we already began. We can already use this as an introduction to your book. Can we? I thought that I could introduce. No, that's not your book. So this is introduction of your book. You don't see this now. I'm not sharing. I thought I could read the back cover introduction of your book. What do you think? Is
Sure.
okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as everyone could already see, now today I have on the podcast Lisa Maroski, and who wrote a very interesting book entitled Embracing Paradox, Evolving Language, Expressing the Unity and Complexity of Integral Consciousness. Let me introduce this book, and where Lisa proposes that humanity is poised on the cusp of a transformation of consciousness that requires not only a shift in values and perspectives, but also a shift in basic technology we take for granted. In a basic technology we take for granted, namely language. Because we use language to create social structures and institutions, including education, governance, and our most intimate relationships. The structure of our language contributes to the way we structure those creations. Maroski questions the cultural assumptions that are built into the structure of language, primarily English, and invites the reader to imagine and ultimately to help develop novel structures of language that arise from different assumptions. To do so, she shows how we can draw inspiration from paradoxical topological forms such as the Möbius strip and Klein bottle, as they embody both unity and duality, multiplicity. By seeing our reality not simply in terms of either or, but also in terms of both, many and, perhaps our feelings of fragmentation and the stultifying oppositions that have polarized society can transform into appreciation for the wholeness of all existence. So this was the back cover of your book.
And thank you for giving us the correct pronunciation of Möbius.
Möbius. Was he German?
Yes.
Then it's Möbius.
Yeah.
Or Möbius. Yeah. Yeah, you can also say Moebius. Yeah. If you want.
Well, yeah. Now Americans usually say Mobius, just this
Mobius.
long O.
Yeah, because the umlaut, the Ö, yeah, is
Yeah.
difficult. And the Ü also, except for Swedish and Dutch people who also use this umlauts. Yeah. If I may ask, when did you begin to have the first ideas about the how language shapes consciousness or consciousness shapes language, and why this is important?
The first
So I
time I
was,
realized that language was let's just say problematic was in physics 101 actually, when I learned about wave particle duality,
uh,
um, and that was what put on, like the glasses that enabled me to see both and in the rest of the world. And I started seeing it everywhere else. In psychology, they would talk about nature versus nurture in terms of how children um, uh, are raised and grow up and what influences them. And so I started seeing, well, it's not nature or nurture, it's both.
yeah.
And so I started seeing both everywhere. And Heraclitus uh saw that, many centuries before I did, when he would point out that both, it's sickness that
Mm,
makes health possible. Um, and so I think it was later um in graduate school then, when I was studying language more specifically, that the connection with Benjamin Lee Whorf, I learned about, Whorf's ideas about the influence of consciousness on language and language on consciousness. um, that there are certain aspects, he said, of the structure of language. And I think that's very important that he used the word structure and not just the word language,
mm,
because people often forget and think that he means, like you speak German, I speak English, and
yeah.
so we're going to see the world differently. Um, it's not I don't think that's what he meant, because he was talking at a deeper level of how the way language is structured reflects the way we see the world is structured, whether we see it, for example, mainly in terms of objects, which
Mm,
English and German, I think, see,
yeah.
the world mainly in terms of objects,
Very
whereas
much.
there are some indigenous languages that have verbs as their primary
Mm,
linguistic source of meaning. And so they see the world in terms of processes and things
yeah.
that are happening. Um, and and it's that level of structure that he was talking about, that influences one's perspective on the world through the language that one speaks. And so I sort of hypothesized, well, gee, I wonder if it goes both ways, if this is a commutative process where we can alter language, the structure of language again,
Mm,
not just add new words. Lots of people have added
yeah.
lots of words over the centuries, and we're still stuck in this sort of materialist, object-oriented way of perceiving the world, because we haven't really altered the structure. We've just added new words. And um, when you have a very interconnected system of systems like language is, just tweaking one little part isn't enough to change the whole thing, because it's a very resilient system.
Yeah.
That was a big answer for your
Yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah.
I
You
really might
already
need
made
to unpack
a
some of
little,
that.
yeah. It was already a short summary of what your book is about. And maybe let's take these metaphors that we already introduced a bit, which are not metaphors. I don't know how should we call them. where you take the example of the Möbius strip and the Klein bottle. So here we have the Klein bottle, right? And
Hmm.
here the Möbius band, the Möbius strip. And yeah, visually I understand but can you perhaps describe it? Because it's difficult to describe it. I
Yeah,
don't find the
yeah.
words. What are these supposed to represent? What are these structures? Why are they so special? And what are they supposed to represent in the context that you are discussing, language?
Okay, so here's a piece of paper, okay? It
Mm,
has two sides, just like it's a normal piece of paper. Okay, in our everyday reality, if we join the ends of the piece of paper, we get a ring, okay, that has a very definite inside and
mm,
a very definite outside. Okay, and they're separate. You have to lift your finger up and off to point to the different sides. Now, you form a Möbius strip by taking one end and giving it half a twist
yep.
and then reattaching it. So
Yeah.
now you can see like the correspondence of the shape to the bottom left Möbius strip, the green one down there. And the interesting thing about it now is that if you ran your finger along one side, you would end up on the other side.
Yeah.
So the two sides have effectively become one side. And that's kind of that allows us to think in terms of paradox. Like you can have at one level, if you are an ant walking
Yeah.
along the Mobius, along that piece of paper, it still looks like the ring. It still looks like, a flat surface with two sides. But when you can see the whole thing simultaneously, you realize that it's different. It's a one-sided topological structure now that seems to have two sides. So this using this as a model allows us to think of concepts as well that seem to be different. They seem to be opposites, for
Mm.
example, but really are like more like the Mobius strip. They at only at one level do they seem to be opposites. At a more zoomed out level, you can see their underlying unity. So now getting from the Mobius strip to the Klein bottle. So this is a structure. It's a plane. This is a plane, flat two-dimensional
Mm.
object that requires three dimensions for it to
Yeah.
fully exist. And the Klein bottle, is a three-dimensional structure that actually requires four dimensions in order to exist. So this is just a model. It's a three-dimensional model of a four-dimensional structure.
It's a plane of
But
section, yeah, of the
yeah, yeah.
four-dimensional manifold, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one in the real one in four dimensions, you would not have this cut. See
Ah,
see
yeah,
where it
yeah.
joins?
Mm.
That that would not be it would not be cut. It would be a smooth surface that becomes outside where outside becomes inside. So this is the model for like the unity of outside and inside.
Yeah.
Or as psychologists often say, of psyche and matter, of what's out
Second,
there and
yeah.
what's, in
Two
here.
aspects of the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you can get a Klein bottle by gluing if you had a very flexible Mobius strip.
Mm.
So The Möbius
Ah,
strip, if I make one by twisting it this way, let's
mhm.
call that a left-hand Möbius strip. If I make it by twisting it the other way, that would be a right-hand Möbius strip. And if you could glue two of them together along their edges, you get a Klein bottle.
Ah, yeah. Ah,
So that's the relation between the Möbius and the
interesting.
Klein bottle.
Yeah. You know that this exists also in physics. It is a real phenomenon. That
Hmm.
you know that the rotation, for example, of a
Spin.
neutron, of some particles, if you rotate in by 360 degrees, you don't have the same particle. You have it in an in-between state. You have to rotate it by 720 degrees to
Yes. Yes.
obtain the particle in the same state. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's completely weird. It's something that we cannot imagine because when I have an object, say, and here my mobile phone, if I rotate it by 360 degrees, it returns to the same position. Whereas these elementary particles are such that you have to rotate them twice to
That's
bring it.
that's because on the
Yeah,
Mobius, you have to walk along both sides. So if you just
yeah,
walk along, like one side, where can I start? Okay, if you walk along one side,
exactly.
360 degrees, you're not done yet. You're
Yeah,
not back where you
you're still
started.
outside.
You
Yeah.
have to
To get
walk
inside
along.
again, if you want to return to the same point on the
Hmm.
same part of the surface, you have to make a 720 degrees
Exactly.
walk, yeah, so
Yeah.
to speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we see here also in my slide. Yeah, and this is an interesting model metaphor, analogy, yeah, to visualize how we can think, how we can see the world,
Hmm.
how these different perspectives, there is an inside and outside perspective, which are not mutually exclusive, but complement each other. Yeah. And lead
Right.
us to something that is entirely new. Yeah. That is neither outside nor inside. It is higher dimensional, so to speak.
Hmm.
So,
Right. So
mm, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think we're going to the same place. So let's take this into, how we um, can have different perspectives on the world, but be able to integrate them. And you wrote
Yeah.
a really great article on Substack about the lack of multi-perspectivity in education and in academia and the effects that that's having
Yeah.
on our ability to live in world life and prosper these days.
Yeah, it is. It is something I see it perhaps more from the pedagogical point of view, right? Because
So,
our school system, yeah, is based on this duality-based viewpoint, or this is true or this is true. They cannot be both true. Yeah, it is something that is still unconsciously, we don't realize this, but it is unconsciously the base of our educational system. And we grow up with this kind of way of thinking and seeing the world, because it's not just thinking, it's just a way of seeing, I would say, or feeling things. And yeah, and this leads to all the issues that our modern society has, especially nowadays. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so what if there were a way in language to combine
Yeah.
these seeming polarities, and not just by mushing words together, like we've mushed together bitter and sweet to create bittersweet,
Mm. Mm.
friend and enemy to create frenemy.
Frenemy.
Uh,
Ah, frenemy. That's good. Yeah. Oh, that's hard. I mean, that's hard stuff. Yeah. It's
But what if there are a way to actually hold two different concepts and understand that they're still distinct. You know, like we still have um nature and we still have nurture. They're
yeah,
not just one thing,
yeah,
but they operate together. You know, they coordinate. You need both nature and nurture. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do in my book is to get people to um, first hold these different types of polarities in their mind simultaneously while recognizing that there's a unity that underlies them. You know, there's a unity underlying the distinction between outside, you know, and inside.
yeah.
Um, and once we can do that with polarities, then we can get to multi-perspectivity and hold
Yeah.
three, four, five, six, you know, however many are necessary.
But what is the difference between holding polarities and getting to multiperspectivity? Isn't this different ways to say the same thing? Because once I holding polarities is perhaps a more intuitive. I don't know. I'm just asking.
Um, well, I look at it pedagogically as well. And you know, you have to learn how to add and subtract before you can learn to multiply and divide.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
Interesting analogy.
if we can hold two and balance the opposites in our minds
Mm,
and understand that underneath the two-ness there is a oneness, there's a
yeah.
wholeness,
Yeah.
then it will just be easier to make the leap to holding threeness, fourness, fiveness. Um, you know, there's a book by Mario Betti,
12
you know,
ways.
saying
Oh,
that
12.
there are 12.
Yeah. Interesting.
But getting to 12, you know, like
Yeah.
that's a
Nice.
lot.
Very
That's a lot
nice.
to hold simultaneously. We need to
Sounds good.
train our neural responses
Yeah.
to be able to hold the tension because there's a tension between the opposites
Yeah.
that wants our conditioned way of thinking wants to default to one or the other,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so we need to learn the cognitive skill of holding the paradox first. I
Yeah.
think. I could be wrong.
I'm just looking up. What do you think, for example, of Gestalt, the Gestalt images? You know that there are these images of the Gestalt, where you can see in the same image the cube. Let me
Oh,
share
like
this.
yeah, the old woman and the young woman and the
The
duck and the rabbit.
exactly the duck and the rabbit. Here it is. You see here, you can see the duck and the rabbit at the same time, right? I use this also very often as a metaphor to say that we can see the same thing. It's not even perspectives in the geometrical sense. It's a different perspective, yeah, from the cognitive point of view. I don't know how to
Hmm.
express this, but and we can also see only just the figure, yeah.
Hmm.
And perhaps the best way is just to see the figure and be able to switch from one side to the other side. Yeah. It's not necessary to have this super high consciousness and see all holy, but at least be able to switch one perspective to the other perspective so that, and we might also prefer, I prefer the duck, the rabbit. I prefer the rabbit, but I am also aware that it is a duck and I can appreciate the duck, yeah, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I must not necessarily identify with the duck, but I understand who prefers the duck. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because there is no one size that fits all. And every perspective, we can also see this from a bit more negative point of view. We can say that every perspective has there's no ultimately true perspective, because every perspective in some sense contains a certain amount of darkness and lightness, of truth and falsehood, also falsehood. Yeah? It's only when we can see all the perspectives all together, then we can perhaps, yeah, it's a bit, but we can say that that is the truth. Yeah? And without
Um,
exaggeration, because I don't like this idea of ultimate truth. And so, but it is a more comprehensive viewpoint that is more powerful in many respects. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe I should share the slides that I have on multi-perspectivity.
Yeah.
So here, what we've been talking about has been perspective taking.
Taking. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, where we take one perspective and then we take the other perspective.
Hmm.
And um, once you're able to do that, you know that there are other perspectives out there. And
Hmm.
so you begin to seek them out. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you only have your limited perspective, and you know other people have different perspectives. And so you go
Yeah.
looking for them. Trans and interdisciplinarity, people who are interested in studying things transdisciplinarily do that. They go and they seek
Yeah.
other perspectives
Yeah.
to enlarge their own viewpoint. And then once you are able to see from different perspectives, the next step is then learning to coordinate them, which is integrating the different perspectives
Yeah.
into a more complex understanding of what it is, you're studying or just looking at. So here's a very simple model of being able to do that. Here are a number of different perspectives on a very common object, my coffee cup. And if you were looking at any one of these perspectives, and somebody else was looking at a different perspective, you would say, well, no, we're looking at something different. I mean, yeah, it's
Yeah.
all red,
Yeah.
but like I see down here, I see a white circle with some markings.
Mhm.
And this person is saying, well, no, there's no white circle, there's no markings, you're nuts. Um, and I'm right and you're wrong. And then, this is what academics get into is
Yeah.
like who's right and who's wrong based on, like which perspective they're they're studying something from. And so these perspectives are all a jumble. But the perspective coordinator would be able to look at them and go, aha, there's these are kind of related. There's looking at it from the top and the bottom. These are kind of related. There's looking at it from the left-hand side and the right-hand side.
Mm.
And these are kind of related. There's looking at it from the front and the back, let's call it, even though that's kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get the whole idea of what this thing is that, it's got a cavity here that can hold something, and a loop here that allows it to be held, maybe because what's put in the cavity is hot, and if you hold it just from this perspective, it's too hot to hold. So
Yeah.
we need the extra little handle here. And so you start getting a bigger understanding of what, this object is.
Yeah.
And this applies to, economic systems. It applies to,
To everything.
you
Yeah.
know, any kind of system. And even, like with the multi-crisis or polycrisis or metacrisis or whatever you want to call it, there there are different systems interacting with that, we need to be able to see them from all kinds of
Yeah.
perspectives and how they integrate. How is the weather, the atmospheric system integrated with the economic
Yeah.
system?
Interesting
It
point.
is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I prefer the word integrating because coordinating comes to my mind someone at the top of a hierarchy that coordinates the different points of view, but those who have these point of view are remain in their bubble. Yeah. Whereas
Yeah,
we are talking about something that every one of us should become able to do. And I think it's natural after all. It's something natural because when I was looking at the cup, at the teacup, I closed a moment my eyes and I automatically see it from all mental. Our mind has already this innate predisposition to see things from all. If you think in an object, a three-dimensional object, you and have a semantic notion of it, and you know it's a cup, it's to
yeah,
hold water or tea or whatever, and you from a first person perspective, you already have this wholeness. It's after this automatic integration that I would even claim that it goes the other way around. The integration is already inherent in our way of knowing. It's something in our mind, probably also a lot because of our education, that we fragment it
hmm,
afterwards. That is, there isn't the process goes the other way around. It is from a perception of wholeness, a process of fragmentation sets in. It's not
yeah.
that we have to take the fragments and integrate it into something. Yeah, I believe it's more in this step. Well, maybe a bit of two. Yeah, we want to be
Yeah.
multi-perspectival.
Well,
Yeah.
and we teach analysis more than we teach synthesis
Yeah,
in the educational system.
exactly. And that was also the main theme in my article, where here we come also a bit into politics. Yeah, when we make this distinction between left and right. Yeah,
Hmm.
okay, I may be more leaning towards a certain political point of view, but I always make this effort to see also the things from the perspective of the opposite point of view, and I can see that they have their points. There is the and ultimately deep down, if we abstract from the whole dirty, murky surface of modern politics, yeah, but these different worldviews, yeah, are the expression of different perceptions of reality that are not right or wrong, but which emphasize different aspects of reality. Yeah. And it is this emphasis where we believe that the emphasis on that, yeah, is the right thing to do, where the other emphasis is wrong. No, the other emphasis just emphasizes something else. And yeah, and in this process, for example, I mean, let's make this example left, right. The one's political view emphasizes collective interests, the social interests, and the other side emphasizes personal initiative, personal interests. Yeah, both should coexist in a modern society. We should be able to develop ourselves, yet to the wealth and good of the collective at the same time. It's the most difficult thing to do in the practice, yeah, because we are egoist, we are selfish beings after all. We have this selfish animal component, and that's where the egoism and selfishness prevails sometimes, very often, most of the time. But it is, I think, the aim of the present evolutionary process that we are going through is precisely to synthesize these two positions. And yeah, as you say, we are going towards a process of synthesis. And we are still, however, stuck in this process of opposition, where one view must prevail over the other. And that is what is creating a lot of
Yeah,
problems.
yeah, because we've separated the concepts, at a very basic level of self and other.
Yeah,
And we have developed ideologies based on putting one in front of the other. And on top of that, and this is a part of language that goes unconscious a lot, like we do it, but we do it unconsciously. And there's there's the term, the word, the concept, but then there's a value valence that we stack on top of it. Like people on the left put a good valence on um, helping others, let's say. People on the right put a good valence on doing for oneself and pursuing oneself. And so with this value
exactly.
valence, we that's where we really get stuck because we automatically, it's like it's unconscious because we're raised to think
Yeah,
with the value valence that one is better than the other. And so we don't even bother wanting to look at the other because we think it's bad. And
yeah,
we need to like realize that self and other can cannot exist without one another.
yeah.
Like we are cooperative
Perfect.
beings.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're out for ourselves. That was an ideology that was very popular for a long time. But researchers are also showing, both in the animal kingdom and in human
yeah,
societies that we're actually pretty cooperative and we help each other out. If there isn't some other,
yeah.
you know,
Social media.
ideology telling us what to do.
Yeah, yeah. That's the power of social media, modern social media. I think this has been
Yeah.
exacerbated nowadays by social media, but this phenomenon already always existed. This polarization of society, and we are challenged. We are tested. I think it's an evolutionary process that tests us and say, do you still want to fall for this stuff? Yeah? And we still fall for this stuff, yes. But I think we are making progress. We are making progress because now there is this awareness, yeah, that there are the other ones that blah 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 tell us how to think, what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Yeah. Another like apparent dichotomy, another seemingly polarity that we have nowadays is the economy, the pursuit of a healthy and a growing economy. Well, growing, I don't know if this is a good thing, but in any case, a wealthy economy and the pursuit of ecology,
Mhm.
of that the environment cannot, this destructive, um, the destruction of the environment, on one side must go on if we want to have a functioning economy. Whereas if we favor a policy that puts first the environment, then we will have strong, very unhealthy economical consequences. This is a dichotomy where we are stuck nowadays. We are not able to put these things together. Yeah? Economy with ecology. Yeah? It's something that is deeply rooted in our heads. Why? Because all our economy was based on a destructive model of the environment.
Mm.
And therefore, we have to reimagine an economy that does not rely on this. And it's not easy. Even experts, even people who have studied this for their whole lives still struggle to find the right way to do that. And there is no universal agreement. But I'm pretty sure that we can. It is possible. But the problem is mainly in our head that thinks in polarities and is unable to put the things together and says you have to make a decision, or you will favor the environment and you will become poor, or you are allowed to become rich, but you must continue to destroy the environment. And that's the problem, the way of thinking, yeah, that we are got stuck. And whereas if we could reach this multi-perspectival, this Kleinian bottle and this Möbius strip way of looking at the world, seeing the world, feeling also nature, I think it would automatically, almost magically vanish all these issues.
I think it boils down to thinking that everything is separate, that you're
Yeah,
separate from me, that I'm separate from the trees outside, that
yeah,
I'm separate from, the glass I'm drinking
mm,
out of. And, um, and in that separateness, we've given ourselves permission
yeah,
to, um, to destroy others,
yeah,
meaning like use them as resources
yeah,
for our economic machine that we've developed, that is tied to another polarity, which is growth and destruction. And the valence, the value valence is that we have bought into is growth is good.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
And
it.
so we've developed an economic system that requires constant growth based on uh, you know, um, turning the external world into resources for the economic machine.
Yeah,
Now, if we saw that we are not separate from those resources, we wouldn't call them resources anymore, for
yeah.
one.
By the way,
Um, and if if, like, would would I say cut off my finger to let's say, it's cold in here and I needed some heat. Would I cut off my finger to burn it for heat?
yeah.
No.
No.
Um, or in some indigenous ways of approaching the world, um, knowing that it is all connected. There are times when we do need to say, cut off a finger in order to, have something to eat, in order to continue to live. But I would ask permission
Mm.
and um and wait for the granting of permission to cut off the finger, because the larger body would say, okay, hang on, I need to drain the blood supply from it, because I still need the blood in your finger to, circulate in the rest of your hand and the rest of your body. So wait a sec, let me drain the blood.
Yeah.
Okay. now you can cut off the finger. Oops, that doesn't
Yeah.
look very good. Video. Um, you
This is
know,
it's just another perspective. I was looking at your finger. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so so if we had a way of languaging
Mm,
our profound interconnectedness like that, that I am connected to the tree I want to cut down to burn in the fireplace to provide heat to, and I would respect the the life of that tree
mm,
rather than just treat it as a non-living or it's living, but a non-conscious thing that I can just go and chop down at will. That perpetuates the old cycle. But if I know that that's a living being, um and I treat it as a living being
mm,
connected to all these other living beings through its mycelial networks in the roots, it's like that's that's the bigger picture that we're starting to integrate
yeah.
and understand and
But this
understand.
connection is not only mental, it's an inner, a soul
Yeah,
connection, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
And that's the real challenge because one thing is to teach it in with some textbook, yeah. But this is a mental level of connection. The real inner soul connection with the otherness, yeah, with the with nature, and needs a sort of inner psychological contemplative connection with nature to see really and perceive and realize that I am part of nature. And when I destroy nature, I am more or less directly or indirectly, on the short term or long term, I am destroying also myself. Yeah. And yeah, this is hard. And that's why I say education is key. It needs generations because we have also to teach children, I think, to live more in nature, for example, instead of learning complex mind stuff, even though I am, I am the mental, the rational, the analytic guy. But
now I
most,
think you're getting into the language part, which is
yeah,
that we can even when lots of people have had these feelings of oneness,
yeah, they cannot express
but
it.
they we can't talk about it in our everyday language.
Mhm.
We have to revert to poetry, but poetry doesn't work in the boardroom. It doesn't
Yeah,
work on the
why
trading
not?
floor.
Why not? It could be interesting. Lesson in schools where the teacher speaks in poetic terms. Would be an idea. Why
That
not?
would, yeah, give it
Yeah,
a try. Teach physics in
yeah.
poetry.
You could also do
I
something
mean,
on that line.
who was it? Feynman. Feynman used to teach a course called Physics for Poets.
Did they? I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh,
Or
interesting.
maybe I just knew of somebody who took a course for called Physics for Poets.
Yeah.
There was no math, basically, is what it boiled down to. But
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that we need a language that reflects or better reflects our ability to hold the more integral perspective. That the structure of our language itself, the way we break things down into subjects and objects, and even we treat linguistically, we have to treat other subjects as objects.
Yeah.
So if I say something, like I love you, it breaks us into an I and a you.
Yeah. True. Never noticed that. Yes. Yeah, 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 yeah. In fact, yeah. So, what kind of, do you have some examples that illustrates somehow? Yeah, this was just one. Okay, but some example in the positive way, where there's this distinction between subject and object, but by changing the language, the words, or the syntax, or semantics, or whatever, we can express this with a different language in a more holistic way. Have you got?
Yeah, so we all know the story about Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, right?
Nope.
I oh no? Okay. Well, that's I guess that's maybe an
American, oh, perhaps
American
American.
children's
Yeah.
poem. So we've
Okay.
got Jack and Jill, a girl and a
Uh-huh.
boy, going up a hill to fetch a pail of water, which, water runs downhill. I never understood why they were going to, unless that's where the source of, like the spring is.
Yeah.
Okay, doesn't matter. Um, now, if we understand this whole picture as being one, Jack and Jill are different, shall we say, aspects of source being, but so is the
Okay.
hill.
Mhm.
Okay. And the way the language um, has us see the situation is through Jack and Jill's perspective. Okay.
Mhm.
They're the ones going up the hill. Well, the hill is is equally as important in this story, but we don't get the hill's perspective of Jack and Jill going up it. Like,
Mhm.
does the hill perceive Jack and Jill as, um, two very respectful young children?
Yeah.
Or are they trampling through the flowers and destroying things? Like, how is the hill
Parasites.
experiencing Jack and Jill?
Yeah.
So we don't, how do we take the hill's perspective? Well, we could, just mess with the syntax a little bit and put Jack and Jill and hill together, as a
Ah,
unit
okay.
with the verb climbing or experiencing climbing. Um, it's a little clunky, I think we can do better than that, particularly when we need to get into things like quantum physics and understanding, the influence of the scientists studying the quantum phenomenon, experiencing it. How are the quantum phenomena, the things that they're the protons, electrons, or gluons or muons, experiencing the physicist?
Yeah. There's no one, even there's not one experience of the physicist. You will have so many experiences and understandings of quantum physics as there are physicists. So already
Yes.
there, it's a quite huge quagmire, but I don't digress. Let's go ahead with your example.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did in my book um, is to get people to start thinking in terms of polarities that are unified.
Mm.
I just started putting them
Yeah,
in the
this is
margins
yeah,
at
it's hardly
growth
visible.
and
It's a sort of
destruction,
yin yang symbol. Yeah.
a very yin yang symbol. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and there are a whole bunch of them, like simultaneous and chronological,
Mm.
um, transparent and opaque, ontogenetic and phylogenetic, emergent and ever present. And we first need to start training our mind to start thinking about them together.
Yeah.
And then we can also draw on some other concepts that I invented of understanding how one becomes the other. Um, so I came up with a just a glyph, which I pronounce Fuangu, and it means the deeper you get, the less it looks like itself. And when you reach the core, it looks like the opposite of what you started with.
Yeah.
So,
What's it? What is exactly? What's this? It's a word or
well, I'm using a glyph, so it's a
Mhm.
symbol.
It's
So
symbol. Okay.
that, yeah. So I came up with a number of different symbols to mean
Mm-hmm.
different things that embody paradox in some way, shape,
Mm-hmm.
or form.
Nice.
Um, and so Fuangu gets into, so when we look at matter and we dive deeply into matter, and matter consists of molecules, and this is the analytic process. And we break the molecules down into atoms, and then we break the atoms down into subatomic particles. And when we get down into the subatomic, it just looks like energy. It just
Yeah.
looks like vibrations. And
Yeah.
so what seems at one level to be, very substantial at its core, there's something very insubstantial.
Yeah. It's not even
And
energy, it's probabilities.
yeah,
Oh,
right,
damn. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so so that's a way of then getting into the more synthetic, like, okay, that's how energy and matter, or substantial and insubstantial, are related to each other.
Yeah.
um like it's like the yin yang symbol, where at the center of the black part you have a little white circle, and at the center,
Yeah.
white part you have the little black circle.
Vice versa. Yeah.
So it's a way of bringing that whole yin yang concept into the English language, and languages like it, that don't have yin yang as a core organizing principle.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I just ask you
Oh, let
this
me,
one.
before,
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
hold that
Go
thought
ahead.
just a second? Because what I want to say is what I'm doing is not like I'm presenting a new truth or a new reality.
No, of course not.
I see myself as a catalyst
Mm-hmm.
to get people to start thinking differently about these things, and developing new forms of language that um, that can do this, but not necessarily like following my forms.
Yeah.
Mine are just like seed crystals to get people thinking.
Yeah.
There are probably better ways of doing this that will require people from different perspectives coming together.
Yeah.
We're going to need the biologists and the physicists and the musicians and the geometers and we're going to need people who see from very different perspectives to come together to form a new structures for language.
Yeah, but that was also my point of critique in my article about perspectivism. I later discovered that it's perspectivism is the right word, not multiperspectivity, but well, it doesn't matter. Um, my critique to multidisciplinarity or interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity is that it didn't really, I mean, you can find on YouTube videos of professors talking about multidisciplinarities in the 1950s, 1960s. Yeah?
Mhm.
And we are still here and talking about that. Yeah. So this is not still not the real thing. We must be able to become perspectivists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Multidisciplinarity is not still not the real thing. It's the first step, if you wish. because the problem is that people believe that perspectivism is about learning everything. Yeah, and it's
Right.
not. It's
No.
not because it's impossible. You cannot know everything about biology, physics, sociology, history, psychology. Impossible. Only an LLM, a large language model, maybe knows these things and then spits out a lot of nonsense. And it's about taking the point of view of the other. Yeah.
Mhm.
For example, I'm not a biologist, but I think I can. After a little bit of exercise, I can take the perspective of the biologist and also of the psychologist and also the philosopher. Philosopher itself is perhaps a bit easier for the physicist because especially if you are interested in the philosophy of quantum physics and the foundations of quantum physics and the philosophy of science, you inevitably, mm, little by little, but not all physicists are able to do that. Yeah, a lot of physicists still are stuck in their point of view. But what we really need is not the knowledge, but this inner shift to see things from different perspectives and say, okay, I prefer this perspective. But I can see physics from the point of view of the psychologist, for example, or from the point of view of philosopher, or from point of view of the biologist, even though my background is that of the physicist or mathematician or whatever. And that's what we really are missing. Because if we are not able to do that, then I have only to rely always. I need the philosopher, the biologist, the psychologist, this, and that tell me their truth. And I say, yeah. And sometimes, in most of the cases, the reaction is, well, that's nonsense. Because when you have, for example, a discussion between hardcore scientists that study the so-called exact sciences, yeah, and with psychologists, for example, and there's always, most of the times, not always, sometimes there's a good discussion, but very often there is this sense of, no, that's for me, makes no sense. Why? That it doesn't make sense for you because you're not able to see their perspective and eventually also see their flaws, which is
Yeah.
okay. But you should also understand their perspective and integrate it and revise your own. Yeah, this sounds very abstract.
Well, and in doing that, we're gonna have to loosen up the boundaries a little bit.
Mm,
You know, like we're still talking as if physics and psychology
yeah,
and philosophy are separate fields
yeah,
in their own little silos with their own vocabularies.
yeah,
When um there we need to loosen up the silos, the boundaries between them, and come to understand the world um, indeed more holistically. Um, I remember hearing a story about I don't know if this was a Montessori school or what type of school it was, but the students were learning about something. I won't tell you what it is quite yet, because this is the way they did it. They weren't told what it is they were learning about.
ah,
They went to one station in the classroom where they got to smell it, and
mm,
then another where they got to taste it, and another where they got to, it was a plant, they got to see it growing, and another where they got, and so they learned all of these different things about how it smells and how it tastes and how it feels and how it grows and all that, and like how it tastes in spaghetti, and um and the kids then got to take some home. And so this one particular kid arrived home, Mom, we learned all about this today. And Mom, took one look at it and was like, oh, that's basil.
Ah, basil. Uh-huh.
And, but they didn't start with saying, we're going to teach you about basil today.
Yeah, yeah.
Basil has this
Very
property and
interesting.
this smell and this taste. And
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
In
And remember when we were studying Goethe?
yeah.
It's like it's more like that. It's more
Yeah.
like
And that's I also have an entire chapter in my book Spirit Calls Nature on Goethe alone, on the Goethean phenomenology, where he had this vision of nature and of life that was holistic. Yeah. And he also emphasized how we cannot just say what it is by making only just one experiment. We must make many experiments, many observations, and then see intuitively, yeah, the archetype, the
yeah.
Urphänomen, the primal phenomenon, the primal phenomenon, which
Hmm.
is, yeah, it's a Klein bottle. It's a Möbius strip that you see it from in their entirety, not only one piece. But another point that before I forget this, because this also needs empathy.
Hmm.
Or we can say it also the other way around, developing this kind of language that is can embrace multiple perspectives and that can see things without dualities and in a holistic way of fosters empathy, or empathy is needed to develop this language. Yeah, and this is also one thing that we deeply need in our society. Well, there are people who say that empathy is a sort of weakness. That's exactly the opposite of what I believe. But I think this idea, yeah, that we have nowadays of empathy as weakness is precisely the last, I hope, I think, the last attempt of the dragon, yeah, to strike back, and which is the dragon of separation, of exploitation, of materialism, that says me, I, ego, I'm here and you are there. Yeah? And there's this sense of separation. And this certainly does not foster empathy. Whereas we have to go towards a society where we see that we are the expression of one spirit in this unity in diversity. Yeah? Because our mind still misinterprets unity as uniformity.
Hmm.
Whereas it's exactly the opposite. The real unity, the spiritual unity, is made always of diversity. And we see this also in nature and biology. A species does not survive if it doesn't change. Genetic
It's always
intermixing.
adapting to its environment.
Yes, adapting to the environment is important, but it must also be able to change. This adaptation is not just to adapt to something that is out there, but it is also a bidirectional
Yeah.
interaction. Yeah,
Hmm.
it is also something that comes from the inside out, not only from the outside that is imposed on us. It's
Well,
also that, of course, but not only.
yeah, yeah. So the way I like to think of empathy is co-feeling from the inside.
Yeah, co-feeling. See, yeah, this is a language. Yeah, this is co-feeling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because empathy has had it's that judgmental valence put on top of it too, where
Mm,
people have experienced empathizers as condescending to them. Like, oh, you're not as well off as I am. I'll give you some money,
Mm.
or
Oh,
oh,
yeah,
you
yeah,
poor
yeah, yeah, yeah.
child,
I
you
understand what you
know,
mean.
right? Instead of just, like feeling along with. You're feeling
Yeah.
that, I'll feel it along with you.
I'm just looking up the word empathy, the
Oh, the etymology?
ein look. Did you know that? That empathy, the origin of empathy, the word empathy is a German word which exactly means what you were saying. It's Einfühlung. Einfühlung means, yeah, co-feeling. What did you say previously? Co-feeling, huh? Something like that.
Yeah, a feeling from the inside.
What I found very often is that when we trace back the etymology of the words, they reveal a much deeper truth
Hmm.
than they express nowadays. The modern words derive from have lost their real true significance. And when you look back historically, their etymological significance it's is much deeper than the words that we use today. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, in fact, what I'm trying to do with, these glyphs that
Mm,
pull two things together, um, there was so quoted by both Freud and Jean Gebser was a German by the name of Karl Abel, who wrote, I think, in the late 1800s. I have searched high and low for his book on the internet, but I have not found it. Maybe it just hasn't been translated much,
mm,
or if ever, you might be able to find it in
okay.
Europe. It was called um, Gegensinn der Ölwörter.
Gegensinn
Gegensinn
der
der Ölwörter, primal words.
der Urwörter. Ja.
And he was pointing out that there are some words that still hold their original
Urworte, yeah. It's a book. You can
duality.
find it on Amazon. Yeah,
What?
yeah, yeah, but it's in German. Yeah.
Yeah,
Über den Gegensinn der Urworte. Yeah. About the Gegensinn, it's anti-meaning, the opposite meaning of the
yeah,
primal words. Yeah, I don't know how you say the initial, the first words. Yeah, of
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Right. So words, he points out, and I only get this like through the translations that came through translating Freud and translating Gebser. Words like altus in Latin have both high and low.
Yeah.
Sacer means both sacred and profane. Greek pharmakon means both poison and cure.
Mhm.
And
Ah.
we still see traces of these kinds of words even in English. And it occurred to me that, if you think back to like early human experience, like
Mm.
before, like even pre-linguistic, okay, what were we doing? We were walking across landscapes. We were walking into the valleys and up to the mountains. And we were walking through the woods and crossing deserts. And so we started to be, we first didn't differentiate valley from mountain. it
Mm.
was just it was just
Mm.
part of
Yeah.
the whole landscape. And the valley and mountain didn't, like, the valley stops here and the mountain starts there. Like
Yeah.
we can do that.
Which is also, from a scientific point of view, is more precise because mountains are just, yeah, it's still part of the same tectonic plate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Um, and so it was an evolutionary survival thing that we did to start to separate them. Like it's safer to go through the forest during the day
Yeah.
than at night. And it's cooler to travel through the desert at night than during the day. So we started making these distinctions for, um, our survival, for their survival value. Unfortunately, we just kept pulling the distinctions apart and giving them different words, and then assuming that the different words meant that they were different things. And that's sort of like where we've ended up now, like having this fragmented world full of a bunch of different things that are disconnected from one another, and we're failing to see their actual inherent interconnectedness.
Yeah.
And somehow we have to get that inherent interconnectedness back into the language so that we can see that, yes, we can make the distinction between night and day. That's still evolutionarily good. But there really, ontologically, there is no distinction.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And
a,
we,
it's a
we we see the things from a surface and are not able to see the underlying,
yeah,
uh, more extended reality, like seeing trees in a forest, which usually are an interconnection of roots. It's a root system and a root network. It's not just separate trees. Yeah, they
yeah,
also, the trees under the surface, under the ground, connect and communicate. By the way, modern biology is now discovering that they also communicate.
they
Trees with
communicate, they
each
share
other,
resources.
share resources, and there are
Yeah,
lots of stuff going on. It's like a
yeah,
neural network of a brain in a certain sense, just to use an analogy, not
yeah,
just saying that it is a brain, but and we see only the surface, we see only the different trees and think in these terms. And
yeah,
then we wonder why we are not able to, by the way, it turns out that we are not able, also modern science, modern forestry has failed to manage in a sustainable way forests. The best way
yeah,
to
right,
manage a
right.
forest nowadays is still let it do its own business and not intervene, because the phenomena, the biological phenomena that are occurring in the life of a forest on a long term is so hugely complex that we still don't understand it really. And if we don't understand how a forest works, you can imagine a brain, a much more complex system. And yeah, yeah, great, great, great. Yeah, I could go on and on in discussing these kind of things, because they reflect an urge, a necessity, a soul connection that is missing. That this sense of unity among humans, first of all. Yeah, I don't perceive this diverseness. Let me say this last thing, and then you may conclude. When we speak about this, is I mentioned in the article, when we speak about tolerance, yeah, we should become a more tolerant society. The word tolerance is already um, wrong word. Let me see what it means to tolerance. It's endurance, fortitude, power, or capacity to bear up. Yeah, it's exactly the wrong word to express how we should relate, for example, to other races, to other cultures, to other nations. Because when I say that I must tolerate you, It means that I don't like you, but I make an effort. Yeah, I have this capacity to bear up your personality, and you the same as me. That's not real unity.
Right.
I intend the real unity in diversity is where you appreciate the diversity without necessarily being it. I can appreciate your philosophy, but I can say, well, I prefer to become a physician or whatever. And this ability to have this inner feeling of the beauty of the other perspective, of the other race, of, for example, how black people dress in America. I I like it. They have their colorful way of, but I myself would never dress like that because having grown in I would probably feel a little bit uncomfortable, yeah. Or in
Well,
India.
that would be an interesting experiment. Go
Yeah,
put on those clothes and see how they make you feel.
yeah,
I had that experience once where uh I wasn't getting married, but there was this sale on wedding dresses in a resale shop.
yeah,
And a friend of mine was getting married, and I thought, well, maybe I can, pick out one for her.
yeah.
'Cause she was having a hard time finding one. So I found this one that fit me, and it
Ah,
fit me
ah,
perfect. And I stood there in the changing room, and it was I was not expecting to feel so different just by putting on this dress.
yeah,
I felt powerful. I felt like a queen.
yeah.
It was like, oh my God, this
Yes,
is
but
why women wear these dresses. It makes you feel
yeah,
different.
yeah. It makes you feel different. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, and that's because there is some beauty in it, in this diversity.
Hmm.
Beauty that we don't have. I don't have. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. As it's there's something that I don't have, and I can appreciate in the other, even if it's in someone who has a very different culture, origin, language, religion, and nationality than mine. And when we will be able to feel this beauty of diversity, we will
Yeah.
never use this word tolerance. This is completely wrong word. It's,
Mhm.
I don't know why. Yeah, I leave this to you to find the right word where we can perceive this togetherness without necessarily being the otherness, being outwardly at least, but we can connect inwardly with this otherness. And yeah, also like Native Americans also have this colorful way of dressing. Yeah, when they
Well,
wear this traditional,
interestingly,
I think that normal
yeah.
Native Americans are just almost indistinguishable, like everyone else in that modern American society, I guess. But when they dress these ancient, uh, popular dresses, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I cannot stand the the barbarian dress. These are not, yes, you see, there I can connect because I connect them with a sort of extreme conservative way of thinking, yeah, which is not necessarily true, but that's the instinct that comes up to my mind. That does not come up when I think at the Native Americans or the indigenous people. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. The changes, though, need to happen at a level much higher than words. I mean, even
yeah,
though indigenous people have, like metacrisis means all my relations.
Ah,
And in Africa, some of the Zulu languages have Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Um, it's not at the level of words that these changes need to happen. It's at the level of mindset, of cultural
yeah,
beliefs.
absolutely.
Uh,
It's a
yeah,
question of mindset. And
yeah.
that's the where we have to work on. It's a mindset. And that's why I think it can't go without new educational system also. We need a new educational system before even being able to introduce this new form of language and this new form of thinking. Because if you are born in a society and are grown up in an educational system that teaches you the opposite and encourages only the opposite way of thinking and of seeing and of feeling, yeah, we will remain. We can have a lot of nice Zoom meetings, sessions, but this won't change in and of itself the thing. So I think education will be the primary objective of the new society of the next generations. If we will
So,
not manage this transition, I think everything else will rely on that. Yeah.
yeah. So over here in the US, the Department of Education in the
Yeah.
government is being gutted,
Dismantle.
it's being destroyed.
Yeah.
So actually in the growth destruction unity,
Yeah.
we once the destruction is complete, we'll have the opportunity to grow something new. So let's start thinking about how this new educational
That's what I
approach
said. Yeah.
will,
Yeah, and you know what kind of objection I found? This
what,
will never be possible. Yeah. Then this is also another abstraction. Yeah, this idea that no, we can't. We must continue with the old system because no, this is impossible, impossible. There's still this voice in the background, and we have to get rid of these
yeah,
voices that tell us continuously, you can't, it's not possible, it's not possible. Yeah, it may be not possible to do it all at once. We will have to do it stepwise. That's for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah,
But let's do these first steps.
yeah,
Otherwise, nothing can change. Yeah?
yeah.
Okay, Lisa, wonderful. I think we are now. It's 90 minutes that we have gone. So it's maybe we can wrap it up. Yeah. What do
Uh-huh.
you think? Yeah. Do
I
you
I
want to
think
conclude
we've
with
reached
something? Have you?
I no, I'm complete. I think we've reached the a good place to launch our next conversation.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Sure.
maybe our next conversation will be like, okay, how would we do this?
Yeah,
If
yeah,
if we think it's possible, let's show people
yeah.
how it can be done. Not like the truth,
Oh,
not like,
exactly. No, it's not about
but
the
just
truth.
as let's,
I
start.
always say, well, I have, of course, when I write my stuff there, I express also strong opinions, of course. But I always say, let's not see it as a theory or dogma or an established truth or a claim. Let's use it as a working hypothesis,
Hmm.
as a conjecture, as a premise, knowing that it is a premise and we should not take it as the ultimate truth, but we have to start with a premise and see where it leads us
Yeah.
because it is the way, it is the path that tells us. And sometimes we have to correct something, then we go a bit in this direction, and then we have to correct something, and then, yeah, but it's normal. But we need these assumptions with which we can work, and we need these working hypotheses. It's not about
Yeah.
having an ultimate theory, but we
Yeah,
cannot
and it's
stay
not
stuck
about
here.
us doing it either. We're doing this podcast
Yeah,
not for our own benefit, but
yeah,
for the benefit of people who are listening, who have
yeah,
gone, who have, like a little light bulb has gone off in your head and you're going, oh,
Yeah,
now it's like, yeah, you go out and do it.
exactly. You know that a
Yeah,
lot of people write me emails and then would like to have a chat with me. So what's the point? We have to have this exchange, but also the collective
yeah,
should be able to profit from it or participate in some way, right? Participate at least as listeners in the podcast. Yeah. If we
yeah,
keep it all for ourselves, like friends, yeah, it's
yeah.
nice. Yeah, but it's just a hobby that does not become something useful for society. Yeah, but that said, don't nurture too many illusions, Lisa, because my YouTube channel is still very, very tiny. I don't know, I have only a few hundred subscribers, so it still needs to grow. By the way, everyone who appreciates this podcast, please subscribe
And send it to your friends.
and send it to your friends. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Lisa, thank you very
Thank
much
you,
for this
Marco.
very inspiring conversation. And let's see if we can organize a second podcast in the future.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay.
wonderful.
Thank you. Have a nice time.
Thank you, you too.
Bye bye.